Hey everyone, and welcome back to Sparkle and Shine, the podcast where we dig into the details of keeping your home clean, cozy, and feeling like the sanctuary it should be all year round. I'm your host, Layla, and today we're getting into one of the most misunderstood topics in floor care, sealing. Now, I know what you're thinking, sealing, like the thing above me? That's definitely not the floor, Layla. Or maybe, oh yeah, we had that done when we remodeled 5 years ago, so we're good, right? Not so fast. Sealing, despite sounding like the thing above your head in your room, is one of those behind-the-scenes heroes that barely gets any credit until something goes wrong. And believe me, I've seen what happens when people skip this step or assume it's a one-and-done deal. Crumbling grout, water damage, stained natural stone, it all adds up and it can get expensive fast. But the good news, it's totally preventable. Today we're going to uncover what sealing actually does for your tile, grout, and natural stone, what materials need it and which ones don't, how to know when it's time to reseal, and the truth behind, quote, permanent sealers that are anything but. Plus, we'll talk about how a professional tile and grout cleaning does way more than make things look pretty. It gives us a chance to assess the integrity of your floors and stop small issues from turning into costly disasters. And yes, that's a little preview of what's coming next week when we dive into Water Damage 101. But more on that later. So, grab a cup of tea, or if you're like me, an iced coffee even though it's been gloomy outside, and let's talk about sealing, because your floors deserve more love than they're getting. Let's start with a little mental exercise. Picture your grout. Now, ask yourself, do you know whether it's sealed? If the answer is, I think so, or it was sealed when it was installed, I think, you're not alone. Here's the reality. Sealing is not just an optional upgrade. It's a layer of protection. Think a raincoat or sunscreen for your surfaces. It shields against stains, spills, moisture, and even bacteria. Without it, tile, grout, and stone are exposed and vulnerable. So let's break it down. Grout is porous. Very porous. Think of it like a sponge. It absorbs anything that touches it. Dirt, water, wine, muddy paw prints, everything. Natural stone, like travertine, marble, slate, or limestone, is also porous and can permanently stain if it's not sealed. Even water can leave a mark. And then you have ceramic and porcelain tiles. These are often dense and don't require sealing, but the grout around them still does. And the purpose of the sealer isn't just to block out moisture. It also makes everyday cleaning easier, prevents mold and mildew growth, extends the life of your tile and stone, and protects your home from hidden water damage. But, and here's the key, it doesn't last forever. We see a lot of clients who assume sealing is a set it and forget it kind of thing. They had their floor sealed when the tile was first installed and haven't touched it since. That's where problems start. Most sealants break down over time. Between daily mopping, foot traffic, pets, steam from showers, harsh cleaning products, that protective layer wears away quietly and suddenly your grout is absorbing everything again. So how often should you reseal? Well, that depends on the type of surface, if it's the grout, stone, tile, etc., the amount of foot traffic, the kind of sealer that was used, whether it's water-based or solvent-based, and whether the tile is in a high moisture area like a bathroom or kitchen, or if it's exposed to sunlight like on a patio or porch. In most homes, sealing should be done at least every year to every other year. If you cook a lot, have pets, or it's been longer than that, you're probably due. And no, you won't always see the problem right away. That's the tricky part. Water damage and stains creep in gradually, and by the time they're obvious, repairs are way more expensive than a sealing appointment would have been. Now let's talk about something I hear all the time. Layla, I paid for a lifetime sealer, so I'm good, right? Honestly, I wish that were true. The phrase permanent sealer gets tossed around a lot in the industry, but the reality is it's more of a marketing term than a literal promise. The idea that you can seal once and never worry about it again sounds great, but it's just not how real life works. Here's the deal. Some high-end sealers are labeled permanent because they're designed to last longer, not forever. Under controlled conditions, like a lab setting, they can last 10 or even 15 years. But your home isn't a lab. You've got cleaning products, especially harsh or acidic ones. You've got dogs tracking in wet paw prints, kids spilling juice, constant foot traffic, sun exposure in front of sliding glass doors, moisture from steamy showers or cooking. And all of those everyday things slowly break down that so-called permanent protection. Think of it like getting a high-end wax job on your car. It's better than the cheap stuff. It lasts longer. But if you park outside, drive daily, and don't reapply it regularly, your paint's still going to fade. So when people say, I had my stone seals 5 or 10 years ago, so I don't need it again, I gently explain, if we tested the surface right now, chances are the seal has worn off or become patchy, and that's when water, dirt, and bacteria start creeping in. So then how do you know if your sealer is still working? Here's an easy little test you can do. Drop a few tablespoons of water on your tile or grout. Wait a minute. If the water beads up, you're probably still sealed. If it soaks in or darkens the surface, it's time to reseal. But don't stress. This isn't about selling fear. It's about knowing what your floors need to stay strong and beautiful for the long haul. Sealing is maintenance. It's part of caring for your home, just like changing your air filter or checking your smoke detector batteries. And the good news, if your floors are overdue for a sealing, that usually means they're due for a deep cleaning first. And that brings us to our next section, which is one of my favorites. So yes, those before and after photos are always satisfying, and honestly, they deserve a moment. But tile and grout cleaning is about so much more than a pretty picture. So let's dig into the technical side of what's really happening when we professionally clean your tile and grout, and why it matters. First up, the condition of the grout. Grout is cement-based, highly porous, and incredibly vulnerable. Over time, it acts like a sponge, absorbing everything from cooking oils to foot traffic residue, pet accidents, soap scum, and dirty mop water. Once that happens, not only does it discolor, but it also begins to break down internally. Here's what we see under magnification. You've got widened pore structures that allow more moisture to seep in, surface level erosion that leads to soft, crumbling grout, and then hairline cracks that form and spread, loosening the bond between the tile and substrate. When we come in to clean, we're usually using specialty alkaline-based pre-sprays that dissolve soils, grease, and organic buildup without etching the tile or damaging natural stone. The cleaning agents penetrate deep into the grout lines to break apart embedded grime that no amount of mopping can touch. Then we gently agitate using tile-safe rotary scrubbers or oscillating brushes, depending on the type of tile. For natural stone, we use gentler nylon brushes. For ceramic or porcelain, we might step up the abrasion to lift stubborn dirt. Finally, we steam extract with water that's somewhere around 180 degrees Fahrenheit and commercial suction power, removing all that loosened debris, bacteria, and any chemical residue left behind. This not only sanitizes the floor, but also ensures that it's prepped for sealing. So now let's talk about tile movement and substrate integrity. When we inspect post-cleaning, we are checking for something called hollow points. Areas where the tiles sound hollow or taps differently, indicating that it's separated from the thin set beneath. This is usually caused by moisture intrusion under the tile, improper installation, structural movement or foundation settling, and thermal expansion in sun-exposed areas. If you catch it early, you might only need to reset and regrout a few tiles. Left untreated, it can lead to full-scale tile failure, cracked tiles, or warping of the underlayment, especially if water is involved. We also check the moisture content along baseboards, especially in bathrooms or kitchens, using a moisture meter. If we detect elevated readings, that's an early sign of water seeping behind the tile or cabinetry, something you'll definitely want to address before mold becomes part of the equation. Now, interestingly, I actually have a story for each one of these things that can happen when the tile taps differently. And I've seen each one of these situations. So you've got moisture intrusion under the tile. We're going to talk about this in a minute too, but it's basically in your shower where the grout has cracked and water's gotten underneath, that water can continue seeping into the thin set and help and force the tiles to separate. And then, of course, when the water is trapped like that, it leads to mold buildup, which is a totally different problem. Improper installation. We actually did a job in Valley Village a couple weeks ago where the client's tile, we were going just to fill all the cracked and hollow grout lines, but as soon as we got there, we started removing the grout and the tile was incredibly loose, and we went to lift not to lift the tile, but just to see what the problem is, and it sounded incredibly hollow. We brought the client over, showed her what it sounded like, let her know that her best option would be to lift the tile and reinstall it to make sure that it wasn't going to come loose again. And we lifted this tile, I kid you not, with our hands. Bare hands pulled this tile up off the substrate, nothing connecting it whatsoever. It was incredible. Not in a good way, but just, it's like, when something is off filled, but not awful, or maybe it was awful. Anyways, it was just mind blowing. Of course, we live in Los Angeles, right? So structural movement, foundational settings, settling. So there's a lot of little mountainy areas. We've got a lot of mini earthquakes, right? It's just the house is settling. It's a thing. And then, of course, thermal expansion. In sun-exposed areas, we had a client who they had a huge sliding glass door and a pool right outside. And in the summer, they leave that door open. The kids would run in and out from the pool. And eventually those tiles started to shift and crack, and we had to help them take care of that as well. So I mentioned showers and wet areas a little bit ago. I want to come back to that really quick. In showers, we're not just looking at surface level buildup. We're checking for things like grout shrinkage or cracking near edges and corners. We're looking for missing silicone, or in some cases caulking, which is the wrong material to use in a shower, but that is what some people have used. Missing caulking or silicone where vertical and horizontal planes meet, which is a major water entry point. And any staining or efflorescence, which efflorescence is like a white powdery mineral deposit that indicates water is migrating through the grout and bringing salts to the surface. All of these are signs that your shower is no longer watertight, and even a deep clean won't fix that if the underlying structure is compromised. And then comes sealing, your final line of defense. After we've cleaned and inspected, we recommend sealing with either penetrating sealers, also called impregnators, which soak into the grout or stone and repel liquids without altering the appearance. So it protects the stone or tile from the inside out. Or you have the option of topical sealers that coat the surface, provide an added shine and that protection in commercial or high traffic areas. The choice really depends on your surface type, the usage, and your aesthetic preference. For example, we'd never apply a topical sealer on polished marble because it'll cloud the finish, but we might recommend it for honed concrete tile in a busy entryway. Bottom line is, when you get your tile and grout professionally cleaned, you're not just refreshing the look, you're resetting the system. You're stopping potential damage, reinforcing the structure, and making everything easier to maintain moving forward. It's smart home ownership, and it pays off. All right, so this week's listener question comes from a client in Studio City. I know you should seal floor grout, but what about the tile on my walls? Do those need to be sealed too? And that is such a great question, and one that doesn't get asked often enough. The short answer is yes. Sometimes wall tile does need to be sealed, especially in wet areas. But as with everything else, there are a few things to consider. So let's break it down real quick. For showers and bathrooms, if you've got natural stone tile on shower walls like marble, travertine, or slate, absolutely 100% you want to seal it. These materials are very porous, and even water from daily showers can cause discoloration, etching, or mildew buildup in the grout lines. Surprisingly, water can even cause marble to rust depending upon what the intrusions are inside of the marble that are causing those pretty lines. Even if the tile itself doesn't need sealing, like porcelain or glazed ceramic, the grout absolutely does. Wall grout is just as porous as floor grout and just as likely to absorb moisture and staining agents, especially from things like shampoo, body oils, and hard water. For kitchen backsplashes, and the backsplash is like the portion of the wall that is tiled, right? In a kitchen setting, sealing grout can be a good idea if your backsplash sees a lot of splashes. Backsplash. Right? Tomato sauce, it gets everywhere. Or if you're using decorative natural stone tiles. If you cook and there just happens to be a lot of grease after you cook, this might be another reason to seal the backsplash. So for glossy ceramic tiles with minimal grout lines, however, might not be necessary, but sealing can still make cleaning easier. And then just a quick bonus tip, if you're sealing wall tile yourself, make sure to use a penetrating sealer and not a topical one. A topical product on a vertical surface will streak, drip, and cause uneven sheen, which is not a good look. So yes, if your wall tile is in a high moisture or high use area, especially with porous stone or exposed grout, it's worth sealing. And as always, if you're not sure what your surface is made of or whether it needs sealing, give us a call. We're happy to take a look, test the porosity, and walk you through what's best for your home. So there you have it, the truth about sealing. It's not just a one-time box to check. It's an ongoing layer of protection for your tile, your grout, your stone, and honestly, your peace of mind. Whether it's in the bathroom, kitchen, entryway, laundry room, or patio, sealing your surface helps prevent stains, fights off moisture, and extends the life of your investment. And when paired with a professional cleaning, you're not just protecting the look, you're protecting the structure. At JP Carpet Cleaning Expert Floor Care, we believe sealing isn't just about keeping things clean. It's about keeping your home safe and sound. That's why we always recommend a deep clean before we seal, so we can spot the little things like loose grout or hairline cracks before they lead to bigger problems. Which brings us to next week, because guess what happens when those little things get missed? Water damage, and it can strike in the most unexpected ways. So next week is Water Damage 101, how to prevent and fix flooring disasters. From burst pipes and leaky appliances to sneaky shower leaks and cracked grout, we'll walk through the signs, the steps, and the smart habits that can help you prevent thousands of dollars in damage. And if it's already happened, don't worry, we'll cover how to fix that too. Until then, keep checking those grout lines, don't sleep on sealing, and as always, keep shining.